times of universal deceit, telling the truth becomes a revolutionary act. Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. Our topic of discussion today revolves around three words: past, present and the future. Past being as to what exactly happened on the 26th of February 2015 after the government took over, and what happened following subsequent to that as far as bond transactions are concerned. Present, what is happening right now at the Presidential Commission of Inquiry looking into the bond scam. The future, what will happen next, and what must the people do? Where does the responsibility lie as far as you at home are concerned? Now, last week on Wednesday was an eventful day for Sri Lanka. Ravi Karunayaka, the now Foreign Minister, the former Finance Minister, made submissions to the Presidential Commission of Inquiry. Three words again still echoes the walls of the Presidential Commission of Inquiry, which is located at Hulsdorf. The three words are, I know nothing. Interesting indeed. What will happen in the future? One thing is sure and evident. That is, this is just tip of the iceberg. There is more people involved. There are many others who are going to be implicated. And also remember, one thing is very sure. Responsibility has to lie somewhere. Is it the Prime Minister? Is it the Minister of International Trade? Is the Minister of Highways at that time? Or the Prime Minister himself? To discuss all this and more, the past, the present and the future, we have four eminent personalities in the studios. Our commentators tonight are Mr. Govind Dayasri, Senior Attorney at Law. Nice to have you on board, Mr. Dayasri. Also joining us this evening is Mr. Chandra Jayaratna, former Chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. Nice to have you on board as well, Mr. Jayaratna. Also joining us this evening is Dr. W. Jayawardena, Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. And joining us this evening is also Mr. Rusiripala Tennakone, who is a senior banker as well as a civil rights activist. So let's start off tonight's show with Dr. W. Jayawardena, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. Let's talk about the past. On the 26th of February 2015, Dr. Jayawardena, when the first bond transaction of the government took place, many raised their eyebrows and many said, no, nothing happened. We saw individuals of the government publishing books and saying nothing went wrong, everything was hunky-dory, there's no problem at all. And now, everything is falling into place. Exactly what we reported on in March in 2015, saying something had gone wrong. What exactly happened? Let's revisit the past and see what really happened.
Samir, what actually happened was on the 27th of February 2015 was that the central bank, as a matter of routine, had offered to the market a 30-year treasury bond carrying interest rate at 12.5%, and since there is no any demand for such a long-term bonds from the individual personal investors and the demand coming only from the provident funds, pension funds and insurance funds, they had offered to the market only 1 billion rupees. But subsequently what happened was the pretending that there is a bigger cash requirement for the government and they could raise that money through this particular bond, the central bank had accepted up to 10 billion worth of these 30-year bonds at 12.5%, where the government has to now pay interest at the rate of 12.5% over the next 30-year period. And in the particular bond auction, within the last 15 minutes of the closure of the bond tender, there had been a massive number of bids presented by one particular primary dealer who had been connected to the then governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka.
Perpetual treasuries.
Perpetual treasuries, and they had in their own name, they had bid 2 billion rupees. And also they had got the Bank of Ceylon to bid, Bank of Ceylon, another primary dealer, to bid on their behalf another 13 billion. And initially the governor had wanted to accept all the bids that had been submitted to the bond auction, that is 20 billion, and if the entirety of the 20 billion had been accepted, of that 15 billion would have been allocated to this particular primary dealer perpetual treasuries. But because of the protest that had come from the senior management in the public debt department, they had finally decided to take up only up to 10 billion, but of the 10 billion, half of that had gone to the perpetual treasuries. The matter is, Samir, now it's a 30-year bond which was traded in the secondary market on that particular day at 121 rupees per 100 rupee bond. It was traded at a premium, and the central bank had also wanted to sell it at a premium so that the government would get a premium income. But the bonds were allocated to this particular primary dealer at a price range of around 89 to 90, so that the government had to incur a loss on account of a discount that had been given to the investor there. So because of this reason, the whole market became agitated, and it was in the news on the very same day, and lots of people had made protests.
Dr. Jordana, I know we've spoken about this over and over again, but I want to revisit the past, as I said before. So it was a 1 billion bond that was initially announced, and then the governor of the central bank, Arjun Mahendran, increases it to 10 billion.
No, he wanted to take the entirety of the 20 billion.
20 billion, but he settled in for 10 billion.
10 billion after
now,
the...
what is the problem? The problem is not informing the primary dealers, or what exactly is the problem?
Is now when you offer a certain amount to the market, Samir, the tradition and the practice had been that you may exceed it only by 2 times. Probably you would have gone for 2 billion. But here they have gone for 10 billion, which is totally irrelevant, because when you go for a 10 billion at the particular bond auction, Samir, the interest rates would go up substantially, and as a result the price of the bond will fall, and it will cause a massive change in the interest rate structure of the country. It has actually, as a result of this accepting this 10 billion from the particular auction, the entire interest rate structure of the country had gone up by about, say, about 0.5%. It had gone up, and as a result the prices of the bonds had also gone down. So all those institutions like the National Savings Bank, Employees Provident Fund, Insurance Corporation, ETF, Employees Trust Fund, which had been holding these government securities as a part of their portfolio, they actually suffered a massive loss which had not been brought to the notice of anyone so far, Samir. And
the calculation is yet to be done.
Yeah, it has to be done. I mean, calculation had to be done, and the largest casualty in this case was the National Savings Bank, because of the total portfolio of the National Savings Bank, about 90% is invested in government security.
In other words, you're trying to say, Dr. Javardhana, that the poor man's tomorrow has been stolen by just one company.
Exactly. I mean, it's actually by a wrong decision taken by the central bank on that particular date, 27th of February. So many people had suffered, Samir.
Dr. Vijayavardhana, before I move to Mr. Risripal Thendakon about the present as far as the Presidential Commission of Inquiry is concerned, I have one final question to you. So this was all very strategic, because we had Malik Samar Vikrama, who was the then chairman of the United National Party, Kabir Hashim, who was the Minister of Highways at that time, who had a requirement of for the Central Highway. We had Ravi Karunanayaka, the Finance Minister, and then we had Arjun Mahendran also attending a meeting ahead of this bond that took place. So in the normal practice, in the usual practice, does high-profile individuals like this sit at such a meeting?
No, it doesn't happen in that way, Samir. The normal practice is, if the government needed any additional money, that has to be communicated to the Treasury Department of the Ministry of Finance, and the Treasury Department would send a request to the Superintendent of Public Debt of the Central Bank. I mean, there is no necessity for ministers and the Central Bank Governor sit in a meeting and make this decision, because the practice has been, also the normal communication channels had been, Samir, for the Treasury Department to send a request to the Department of Public Debt of the Central Bank, and the Department of Public Debt of the Central Bank will take action to raise the required money. So this is exactly what should have happened, and there has not been any necessity for these high-profile individuals to sit at a meeting and decide on the amount of the money that they needed on that particular day.
Thank you very much, Dr. W. Rajavardhana, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. I now move my attention to Mr. Rusiripala Tennakone, a senior banker as well as a civil rights activist. Ms. Tennakone, you were present last Wednesday at Halsdorf to hear Mr. Ravi Karunaika making submissions. And the three words that, as I said at the start of this show, which would still echo the walls of Halsdorf, is the fact that I knew nothing. Quite hilarious indeed. Just tell us what exactly happened on that day.
It was a very interesting day, Samir. I think we deliberately went there because we wanted to find out for ourselves what really was happening there. I think the questioning by the Solicitor General from the Attorney General's department, from the prosecution, was they started with a letter, undated letter. They pointed out very clearly from the evidence that this was an undated letter, this was no file number, this has been signed by the then Minister of Finance, and that was addressed to nobody, and that letter was issued at the request of Arjuna Mahendran just to confirm that there was a requirement of additional funds. Now, the letter came, to be disputed by, in many quarters by the prosecution as well as even the judges. Finally, the judges said, well, we know about this letter. We don't have to waste any more time. Now, let us move on to this apartment business. Actually, the whole country was waiting to find out what was this apartment transaction was. In fact, that was what we were also interested to find out, because of the evidence that has been led previously, that a huge transaction amounting to 165 million has taken place. And then, we wanted to know what exactly has happened. So, the questioning started, and the answers from the beginning was, when the former finance minister was asked, when Mr. Ravi Karunaika was asked, whether he knew that there was a lease agreement to the flat, to this apartment where he occupied, he said, I don't know. Then he was asked whether you were a party to the lease agreement by any chance, did you know that it was being negotiated? He said, I don't know. Then he was asked, who negotiated this? He said, my family has negotiated. Then he was asked a very specific question, didn't your family tell you, inform you at any stage that they negotiated a deal like this? His answer was very strangely no. And then, it was so incredible and unbelievable for the minister. At one stage he said that the size of the apartment was 2,000 square feet. Then the judges themselves had to produce the lease agreement, which had a floor plan of the apartment, which also had the sizes of the apartment. They said, well, we have a document here, which is a deed that has been registered, which says that it is 4,000 square feet. But Mr. Ravi Karunaika insisted that it was only 2,000 square feet. He said it's only 3 rooms. Then the judges had to ask, does this flat has only 3 rooms or does it have a living area as well? Then he said, yes, there is a living area as well.
Didn't the judges ask Mr. Karunaika, Mr. Tennakone, I'm just asking you because I was not obviously present.
Yes.
Didn't the judge ask, so your family paid 165 million rupees for a 3-room apartment?
Yeah.
Was that question raised?
This was raised. It was big money. And in fact, how the money was brought to his company by his chairman, by the chairman of the company, Lakshmikantan, was raised. Then he very clearly said, yes, he sort of corroborated the evidence of the previous accountant or somebody, Mr. Chinaya, who gave evidence before the commission. He said, yes, on 2 occasions, my chairman has brought money, 70 million and 75 million, in cash to be put in the vault. And then,
who is Lakshmikanthan? Has anyone seen this individual?
well,
or is it a fictional figure? Because it could happen. According to the evidence that was given by Mr. Ravi Karunayaka, he's an Indian based in Britain.
yeah.
So there is no opportunity for us to even try him in Sri Lanka. So
and
is he
also having a
figure?
company registered in Virgin Islands. I mean, these are all highly fictitious things for us to believe. But anyway, he was giving evidence under an oath. And he very categorically and positively said his chairman brought in this by cash. Then the question of bringing so much of cash, the question of whether there was money laundering involved, whether there was the KYC factor that was involved as to who brought this money and whether the company would not want to know what it was for, all those questions were raised by the judges.
And there was something also interesting that happened, Mr. Nakuna. I heard that when the State Council mentioned about Emil Kanthan, whether Lakshmikanthan was related, the Foreign Minister had said, I don't know. And then the State Council said, he's a terrorist, Emil Kanthan is a terrorist. And then Prasanna Jayawardena had said that it's very sad that the Foreign Minister of Sri Lanka does not even know who are the terrorists who once inflicted damage to Sri Lanka.
That was another point in very much a disfavor of Ravi Karunayaka, because he should have, the rate he was going on saying no, no, no to everything, and he said, I think probably to this also he said the same thing, but the judges very much, I think, disbelieved him. And at one stage, Honorable Prasanna Jayawardena, one of the judges, he categorically asked, Mr. Karunanayaka, do you want us to believe what you say? Very categorically. I mean, that was enough to convey the message that it was very hard to believe what he was saying. Then he said, at another point, three things he mentioned. One was, okay, do you want us to believe what you say? Then he said, all what we could get from you at this today and in evidence is that you will say that you don't know anything. Isn't that so? He said yes. He said yes. Then the third most important question raised by the bench was that he asked a very specific question. Mr. Karunanayaka, would you have gone into occupation of this apartment if you knew that this had anything to do with these perpetual treasuries and that somebody else was paying this money? Then Mr. Ravi Karunanayaka, for that question, of course, he said, yes, I wouldn't have gone. Now, Samir, the most important thing that arises from this entire thing is, now the then Minister of Finance is aware that he has done something that he should not have done as a minister. We don't want to know anything about his connection with the perpetual treasuries or anything, or the bond issue. One simple question that comes to our mind is, here is a minister, a very responsible minister, now holding the portfolio of the foreign ministry of this country. And he says, yes, I would never have gone into occupation had I known this. What does it mean? It means that he has committed something wittingly or unwittingly which he should not have done. So now what is left for him is to respond to the mistake, the error that he has done.
Thank you very much, Mr. Risibal for your thoughts in the first round. I'm going to deviate from the usual protocol and quickly pose a question to Faraz. Faraz, you were also present at this sessions that took place on Wednesday. I was quite startled the way in which the former finance minister, the now foreign minister, right after the submissions were over after 5 hours, came to the media and said, I gave evidence, but based on what Mr. Risibal is saying right now, he had just said, I knew nothing. He was like a hero at that point. And no journalist questioned him back.
Well,
Why?
when he was in the within the commission, Mr. Karunanayaka was, shall we say, almost a model witness. He had to be warned twice to not make a political forum out of this business. And he was rather meek, and he was even more meek when they confronted him with the SMS evidence. And so when it was rather surprising that when he came out, you know, all of a sudden his tail was wagging high and mighty, and he decided to have a go at the media and the Attorney General's Department. I have a feeling that the press there, they were mainly cameramen and so on, but I think the press decided to let him have his party piece and let him hang himself more, because that's what he did. He came out there and he took a swipe at the Attorney General's Department, and he took a swipe at the media, saying that it was unsubstantiated claims. But it is he who admitted to what he did, the conflict of interest. He admitted to it inside.
For us, when you really look at it, when you really look what happened on that particular day, and the statement that was made by Ravi Karunanika saying that the pin-pricking by his friends are the worst as far as he's concerned, and this has hurt him a lot. What does it really mean? Do you think that there's anyone within the UNP itself who's trying to, because we saw Daya Gamage making a statement and saying that he thinks that Ravi Karunanika should resign. We saw Dr. Pakisar Saranamuthu from the Center for Policy Alternatives also coming out and saying very strongly that the foreign minister has to resign. Who do you think he referred to? Is it the Prime Minister, Malik Samaravikrama, or Kabir Hashim, who were part of...
I think, in my mind, when I listened to him say that, in my mind, the image of Mr. Malik Samaravikrama flashed into my mind. This is not the first time Mr. Karunanika has made sort of indirect references to him, and that is all I could think of.
Thank you very much for enlightening us as to exactly what happened on that day. So, getting back to the usual protocol, my next question is going to be directed at Mr. Chandra Jayaratna, former chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. I want to focus on the future, Mr. Jayaratna. We spoke about the past, we spoke about the present, and let's talk about the future now. Now, this is certainly the tip of the iceberg. We have one man who has been questioned, and this has sent shockwaves across the political platform, and probably even shivers down the spine of the Prime Minister right now, because obviously they're losing popularity, they're losing ground as far as this issue is concerned. But what should be the thinking right now? How must we look at it now? Let's talk about the future.
Well, to recollect what I said about a few weeks ago when we discussed this same subject, I said the first thing is that anybody who is a party to what has happened, and what has happened is wrong, everybody knows what is wrong, should own up, resign, and at least at this stage save whatever that can be salvaged out of the promises and the hopes of the people in a government. I would say that's the almost immediate future, is because this has opened the doors, and it's going to more and more is going to just pour out with the truth. And there are so many people who are involved within the central bank, outside the central bank, EPF, all those people. I think all of them, in my books, should own up, become even crown witnesses, not crown witnesses, own up, and then face the penalty of the crimes they have done, plus our leaders in society to whom people had faith. To me, the biggest issue here is people are losing faith in governments. We, the people, felt the previous lot of people who governed us were not of the caliber that people want, which was good governance. These people came on the platform of good governance, and if there is anybody, my plea even today is let them own up and go. But that's the immediate future. That's the immediate.
Mijarat, the problem right now is, this is not just a scratch, this is a wound. This is a very big wound for the government. What must the people do in a situation like this?
Well, my issue is the people must put people's pressure. The governments will only react to people's pressure. Shame to shame them, to expose them, to demand accountability out of all of these people. Because they believe, I mean, what happened that day and what has now been aired by my colleagues and Faraz shows that they still believe that they can fool the people and go forward. Now, my question is one important one, we can deal with it at a later point. All the professionals, central bank has the best intellectuals in this country. Anybody's dream would be to end up in the central bank as a high official. Now, what is shown through this is that they have not been. Those who have been accountants, auditors of these companies, and the bankers, we can come to it later, the people who accepted money in cash without generating a suspicious transaction report, all the professionals who neglected the requirements of the FIU directions. Why have they done this? Time has come for the people to demand that the people take away the political power of politicians in running the establishment and the finances. We go back to the my request is pre-1972 section 52, which made the secretary of a ministry the chief accounting officer, which was then made to become under the ministers have only policy direction, not direction, control and supervision of the secretaries and the ministry. So that you separate the power of policy making, separate the powers of administration. Entrust the public finances which belong to the people to people who are accountable. Make them accountable, pass the audit act, pass the surcharges, and let us go forward. People must now demand, at the same time as they are trying to pass a 20th amendment to the Constitution, let us change this one thing which has given extraordinary powers to a minister to do what they want.
Ms. Jayaratna, talking about the future, you just said that the 20th Amendment of the Constitution should not be the focal point right now, should not be the priority. We already have laws that are enacted, we just have to implement them. But don't you think professionals and the people of Sri Lanka are now looking at justice? They want to see someone brought before the law, someone being punished to the wrongdoings of this bond scam at this point of time.
I don't say someone, I said all who have been responsible for mega corruption. This government has many, the previous government has also many. Let us bring all of them to justice at the earliest. And anybody who's blocking the path must also be removed or resign now. If anybody is preventing the Auditor General, anybody is preventing the Attorney General, anybody is preventing the investigative authorities from doing their investigative functions, they must all step back or they be removed by the President under presidential power he has.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chandra Jayaratna. I want to focus my attention now to Mr. Govind Dasri, a senior attorney at law. Mr. Dasri, there is a statement which reads, there's always a woman behind every man's success, but in the case of Ravi Karunayaka, there are two women behind his success. Seems like it. When you heard the submissions that were just made by Mr. Rusipal Tendukar and even Faraz about what transpired last Wednesday, what did you recollect?
Now, Shamil,
what did you gather?
Do you want me to be the relic of the past or a future shock? Where are you positioning me?
I want you to be honest to yourself and say what's going to happen in the future, and tell me a little bit about the past as well. Drag a little bit from the past. Tell me what happened in the present and the future itself.
Thank you. Now, I think those two ladies are going to be an absolute revelation to what they said. I think the daughter said something very interesting. Why hang my father when so many others have done so much? Or words to that effect. The wife said, well, we paid. Now, what is shocking is Ravi Karunayaka comes and gives evidence, I'm sure, with a lawyer. I don't know whether with his advice or not. But, as Faraz said, he did something more than what Faraz said. It is an admission. He admitted that they have taken the house at a price by both an Indian businessman and who had paid and perpetual treasuries. You see, in law, if you don't deny specifically, then it is deemed to be consent or acceptance of the fact. So, poor man, I feel sorry for him, because his only chance, I thought, if I was his lawyer, I would have examined his whole case, seen whether there's even the tiniest hole for him to creep through. If that was not, I would have told him that damage control, you must go there, admit you're in wrong, that you did wrong knowingly or unknowingly, but also ask for, express your remorse, say you're sorry, and leave and resign. Now that is exactly what is not happening. He's putting this government into a tremendous embarrassment. A government that came on the lines of good governance is showing to be damning in their methods of government. More so, this is not all. This must be only a pinprick that has surfaced. How much more must be happening beneath the table? What is happening? I mean, who sorts it out? Fortunately, now we saw many things happening last time. The ambassador in United Kingdom was assaulted. There was commissions, all kinds of wrongdoings in the country. Nothing was examined. But here, fortunately, a few things did happen. Arjuna Mahendran was removed and Mr. Kumarasamy installed. I think that was a minor victory for the government and to our President Sirisena for having taken that step. Secondly, he appointed a commission. Now that would be a very, very wise and prudent thing, because if he didn't have a commission, there would have been no day-to-day sittings. One sitting would have been followed after 6 months, and during that 6 months, the complaints would have, the plaint would have had to be amended, new witnesses would have come in, then new officers would come here, you would change the caption. No nonsense. You are in a commission, and also 3 very, very active, very excellent people with investigative minds, integrity, ingenuity were appointed.
Mr. Ashri, you said that fortunately Dr. Indra Kumarasamy was appointed as the governor, but I look at all the events that transpired last year as quite unfortunate. Why? Because this government was appointed to bring to book those who did wrong during the previous regime.
Yes.
And they have failed for the last 2.5 years.
You're spot on. Because the problem was, if Arjuna Mahendran was there, even this much wouldn't have sufficed. You must resign. How can the UNP even investigate the acts of the former finance minister if he still holds office? If he has anything called shame or respect, he should on his own resign. Because remember, he is not a supporter of the UNP. He has been in almost every political party that has been in office. He has held ministries under several. He is no lover of the UNP, but UNP also has to be mindful. He came quite high on the UNP list. He got 50,000, 80% of the vote in the Colombo North electorate. So they must be concerned. But that is not sufficient, because the large number of people are involved in this. As far as Dr. Kumarasamy is concerned, I blame him. He should have been more active. He should have gone in search of material.
No, the question is not that, Mr. Ashri. The question is it unfortunate that this government, which was appointed to bring in good governance and to bring to book those who did wrong, committed wrong during the previous regime, are scot-free? And now we have one man who is in this government being grilled by the Attorney General's Department for something that he's responsible for. Don't you think this is quite unfortunate?
Quite extremely, because if there is material, that material should have gone to the Attorney General's Department. I'm sure the FCID would have done a good job. They would have handled the material.
But someone is blocking it, isn't it? Someone is blocking it, isn't it?
Not somebody, it is some people, because
who is it, Mr. Ashri?
Well, it's difficult for me to name names, but I can tell you clearly, if I ask about the Attorney General's Department, the team that is doing this case is doing it brilliantly, doing it extremely well.
But you just said that the FCID is filing the charges at the cases at the Attorney General's Department, but someone in the Attorney General's Department is not taking the ball and running. So who is that person who's blocking it?
Very easy. Now we had a case before this against Ravi Karunanaka. That case, what happened? And in this case they are proceeding. The difference is that case went before court, this case is before commissioners, Supreme Court judges, excellent people, they are finding it. And also, we have a good team in the Aegis department conducting this. The same team, virtually the same team. I know Koda Goda, he did a wonderful job when he was against me in the Human Rights Commission. But he was, I must say, he was a good opponent because he really fought hard for his people.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gomindash. We, of course, will grill you further in the second, third, and the fourth rounds. So I open the floor for questions from our journalists. On to my immediate left is Charita Fernando, and on to my far left is Faraz Shaukat Ali, host of Newsline. Faraz, so let's start off with you.
Thank you. They're all here, so who shall I ask the first question from?
It's up to you, Faraz.
All right, then we'll take Mr. Rusripala. Mr. Rusripala, you've been following this tragic Bondgate for what, over 2 years now. You've had threats in the form of letters of demand, which I hope you've dumped in the dustbin by now. What do you feel? Do you feel that we're at the end of the tunnel?
I'm afraid not.
Why is that?
We are beginning to see for us very many things which we did not even foresee at that time. Some of the things were mere conjectures, and we were thinking with the little available information, with so much of suppressed information, we were able to grope in the dark and guess certain things, that the possibilities, but now they are becoming realities. Now the difference is, when such things are available as clear evidence, I don't think this commission can stop at the targeted dates. They have a long way to go and very many people to be brought into the net.
But Mr. Rusripala, don't you feel that the focus of the Commission of Inquiry seems to have been hijacked along the way, and the focus is shifting somewhere else, when the focus should be on resolving the bond issue? That's the name of the commission, to look into the issuance of bonds by the central bank.
I'm afraid, Faraz, it's not so. The warrant issued by way of a gazette by the President does not limit it to, examine the bond issue alone. Any irregularity connected, any misuse of power, any suppression of information, all those things are specifically mentioned in the Gazette.
But Mr. Rusripala, we now see that Mr. Karunanayake has arrived there mainly because, or only because, his name has been mentioned by one of the other witnesses, by Ms. Vijayasuriya. And the whole nation seems to be talking about that now. So I'm sort of fearful that the focus is being lost in terms of the bond, because after all, Mr. Karunanayake, as Minister of Finance then, was rather divorced from the subject of the central bank. That wasn't listed under him. So, aren't they losing track of who's responsible? Who is the minister responsible?
Oh. I don't think that's the way how we should look at it for us. From the beginning, if you look back very carefully, there was this the information that this was not a thing that happened accidentally. There were so many things that were done, orchestrated to perpetuate this action. Therefore, and Mr. Ravi Karunanayake's name was involved in those. Therefore, his name getting connected to a flat now and a super luxury apartment is a new development. With or without the apartment, Mr. Karunanayake's name was associated with the bond transaction.
Faraz, with your permission, can I direct this question to Dr. Vijayawardhan, if you don't mind, please. Dr. Vijayawardhan, this is an interesting point that Faraz brought in. When the second bond transaction took place, and even the first, the central bank was not under the purview of the then finance minister. It was there for 7 months, and then that was taken over by the Ministry of Economic Development. So
Samir,
ultimately, who is responsible for it?
No, I mean, Samir, the listing of the central bank for administration purposes under the Ministry of Economic Affairs does not preclude the powers which had been given to the Minister of Finance under different statutes. For example, under the Montreal Act, Exchange Control Act, Banking Act, Non-Bank Finance Companies Act, under all these relevant legislations which are relevant to central bank, the Minister of Finance is the person who is responsible for the operations of the central bank, and therefore listing it for administration purposes under the Prime Minister doesn't preclude the responsibility of the Minister of Finance, and he is the one who has to deal with everything that the central bank does. So therefore there's nothing wrong in his name getting dragged into the board.
You speak of the statutes in which the finance minister has rights over the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. Dr. Vijayawardena, my question to you is, why was Malik Samaravikrama, who was the chairman of the UNP, attending a meeting on bonds?
Yeah, but of course when this question was asked of him, Samir, he gave the explanation that he attended that particular meeting as the senior advisor to the Prime Minister, not in the capacity of the chairman of the UNP, senior advisor to Prime Minister, and therefore he said he had a legitimate reason to attend that particular meeting.
Dr. Vijayawardena, when you look at what has happened over the last few years in government, these not just one bond transaction we're talking about. This is several bond transactions. I recollect Mr. Chandra Jayaratna on a certain political program came here and said, we're just talking about one bond transaction, but that is not the case. There are several other bond transactions that took place, and which Sri Lanka lost colossal amount of money, which is the poor man's money at the end of the day through the EPF. What's going to happen next? Now, we have Saman Kumar, who is going to give evidence on Wednesday. Then we have Arjun Aloysius is going to give evidence on Thursday. And then you'll have Arjun Mahendran also giving evidence, hopefully this week or even early next week. What's going to happen next?
The reason is true, Samir, that it's a series of bond transactions that had been used by these perpetual treasuries to its own advantage, mainly because of one reason that they had been able to do that. The reason is that the Arjuna Mahendran as governor, he had, without consulting anyone in the central bank and also against the wisdom of the officers of the central bank, he had decided to abolish a system of bond auction that had been there from 1997. That system was it was called a hybrid system, the auctions plus direct placements. So he did away with the direct placements, and as a result the central bank lost a very valuable weapon which it has to fight any primary dealer who is there to corner the market and make a profit for himself. So because of that particular reason, they had the series of bond transactions. It's only now, after Dr. Hitesh Kumarasamy became the governor, after 1 year, last week the central bank has now made amends for the mistake that it had done. It has reintroduced the direct placement system in a new word now.
Ms. Jayaratna, quite interestingly, you've been a supporter of this regime. You've always been a staunch supporter, stating that good governance is important, there needs to be change in Sri Lanka. Now it seems that things have not worked out right. You had a previous lot who was very corrupt. You have the present lot who is also corrupt. My question to you now is, what is the alternative? Is there an alternative in Sri Lanka at the moment?
The alternative is for the people to exercise their rights, demand accountability, media to do its particular role and expose where things are wrong, media and the people to shame, media and the people to put pressure, media and the people to have a satyagraha or whatever, and show that people can get away. For instance, if what happened in the bond scam in March 2016 cannot be an accident, cannot be a trial for the first time. It was a repetition of what happened previously, but done at a bigger scale. So this is a planned scheme.
Can we draw precedents from countries like Australia, where we saw a minister resigning over a bill? Then you saw Nawaz Sharif resigning, who had to resign after a submission that was made by the Supreme Court of Pakistan, saying that he's not fit to be the Prime Minister of that nation. Can we draw precedent? Is resigning the option now for Mr. Ravi Karunanika?
To me, resigning is, by the way, what is important is to make sure that accountability, good governance comes in back. Firstly, let us look at all the professionals involved. Have they done their job? Not only this, I mean, let's take a lawyer. Some lawyer would have, in this particular instance, attested the deeds for the lease agreement. There would have been a lawyer who would have attested the purchase. In the attestation, they must find the source of funds. Where was the source of funds? Look at the accountants of this company, which supposed to have paid for out of cash that was not in their books and registered.
But Mr. Aratna, at the end of the day, the accountants are working for an individual. He's being paid by an individual concerned. So would that person or the professional go against the person who's paying a salary? It doesn't seem realistic, does it?
It has to be, because as you can see, the International Accounting Standards Board has now declared, and Sri Lanka has adopted from 17th of July this year, what is called NOCLA, or non-compliance with laws and regulations. There's a process to be adopted. Now, the accountant who's going and paying money into a bank, knowing that that money is laundered money or money that doesn't belong, he is an accessory to that information. He is a part of that thing. The banker who's accepting that thing of a politically exposed company, there are rules on the FATF. Bankers who haven't done their job.
Sardar, just give me a second. Mr. Astri, are you in agreement with what Mr. Jayaratne is saying? He's saying that accountability is important, but you're of the view that Mr. Ravi Karunanika has to resign honorably.
No, not only Ravi Karunanika. I am not agreeable to what Mr. Chandra says or Mr. Rusiripala says, because I'll deal with Mr. Rusiripala's point a little while later. You see, we must do away with all these strikes, satyagrahas, road shows and stoppage of work. Time has come. There's one simple thing that has to be done. That is, we have two leaders of two political parties who have been in office for over 45 years. One is celebrated its 40th anniversary. Two generations of voters have come. They have won, they have lost. Both have won and lost. Time has come when they must gracefully retire.
But what is the alternative?
The alternative is, in the very parties or from outside, new leadership must come. Without a new leadership, all this good governance, new leadership must bring new faces, new people, new generation. We have two generations who have completely left out. Who are the follow-up people? All relations, friends, children of the present politicians.
Mr. Dasari, I have a question for you.
Yes, please.
Sorry for interrupting.
No, please do.
You spoke of damage control earlier.
Yes.
So what difference would it make if Minister Karunanika resigns immediately, or waits till the motion is brought forward in Parliament, and how does that impact the survival or the stability of the government?
Government, the country and himself. If you look at the position, each day he is acquiring more and more muck. So it would have been much better if he came without asking for those postponements on the basis of he has cabinet meetings, he has national security meetings, he has to go to Maldives. If you have lost confidence, you must try to gain confidence. If you can't, you must quit. That is politics, clean politics. Right. Point two. As far I don't think he's a lover of the UNP. The UNP has many people who are committed, who are dedicated.
But that's a very subjective statement, isn't it?
That may be subjective, but the point
you can't
is...
say that whether he loves the party or not, Mr.
No,
Ashri.
I can say this. He has been in so many different political
parties. But he's the
parties.
vice president of the National Party.
No, he has been in so many political parties at different times. Can you say that of Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe? He has been in one party. Mahinda Rajapaksa has been in one party. They have always been loyal to the party. They have not moved around.
You know very clearly, Mr. Ashri, because of Mahinda Rajapaksa, the so-called individual that you say loved the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, the split has happened because of him in the Sri Lanka Freedom Party today.
No.
And if he loved the party, he would have resigned and said, okay, let Maithripal Sirisena handle the job or do the job. No, so that's a very subjective statement, Mr. Ashri.
No, that is exactly what I am saying. He should even now resign at this stage. He should resign from politics, Ranil Wickremesinghe, because we need new faces, new names, new people and new systems of government.
Mr. Dasari, why do you think he hasn't resigned so far? Do you think that he's waiting for more information to come out, or what is the most likely situation?
Likely situation is when the vote of no confidence, when his no confidence motion comes, he might find very many UNP people voting against him. I think he's going to be very embarrassing. I won't be surprised if the UNP or he himself or his lawyers or his friends persuade him to resign, because that is in his best interest. Best interest from the country's point of view, because we can't have a finance minister or a foreign minister who has disgraced the country.
Mr. Tenakot, I have a question for you. I'm reading an article from the Daily FT which says, this is on the back of what Farah said about the penthouse, the focus on the apartment. The problem is not Ravi's penthouse. The problem is the house of cards that Prime Minister has built in the last 2 years. It's a fragile structure sustained by declarations of good intentions, orchestrated deceptions and brazen political horse trading. What's your take on this? Is this the big picture?
Yes. I think if you are focusing on the resignation part of Ravi Karunanayake, you see what is most important is the morality and the ethical conduct that is required of a minister of a cabinet. You see, now in this case, what we are saying is, what is the Prime Minister of this country saying today? He made a public statement, it appeared in all the papers today, and he says, we will not keep anybody done any wrong in our party, but we will have to wait till the investigations are over. Now, my God, people of this country have got enough and enough evidence that there is something definitely unethical, unbecoming of a cabinet minister has happened. The people have already passed the judgment. What we are waiting for further investigations is something that cannot be comprehended by me. I don't know. Because, see the investigations, what does it mean? Say this commission is over tomorrow. Commission will come up with some recommendations which will have to be by way of criminal instigations or criminal actions installed, or initiated. How long will such things take? Does he mean by investigations completed the completion of all these things? See what has happened in other countries. People have not waited till investigations are over. When there is a public hue and cry, 4 ministers in France resigned. Macron's government. What were the charges against them? Their party people were accused by the public that they misused funds from the European community. No charges proved. They resigned. In Australia, somebody mentioned just now, 2 ministers resigned in Malcolm Turner's government. What happened? The health minister resigned. For what? Because she travelled for her private tours, and she, in her statement of inland revenue in the tax papers, she declared them as official travels. Resigned. Investigations are yet to take place. Then the other minister, his name I can give you, he's Stuart Robert. He's another minister. He resigned. Why? Because there was a conflict of interest that came up because he went to China to discuss a deal where a company was involved. That company was financing the opposition party. He resigned. This is what is happening in the world. Even in the case of Nawaz Sharif, the Supreme Court only found that he was dishonest and untruthful. No charge was proved against him. That was about the Panama Papers. And the Supreme Court ordered that criminal action should be initiated. So criminal action is yet to be taken. But Nawaz Sharif is gone.
Dr. Vijayawardena, one last question. Do you think, going by now, thanks to this inquiry, we have got to know of information that would have never, unearthed. What kind of space does it give the president, to play his pack of cards? What are the options available for the president?
Well, lots of options are available, Charita, because we have to yet to see what the recommendations of the Bond Commission would be. But if the Bond Commission has identified certain people who had been responsible for the bond scam, then the President can direct the Attorney General's Department to take legal action, because Chandra and all others were talking about the taking criminal action against the people who had been responsible for that. So President will have to initiate action through all law enforcement agencies to against the people, and also to recover the money that had been stolen from people.
In the meantime, if there are other big names that come out and it threatens the stability of the government, what are the other options available?
Well, it appears, Charita, now the government is now in serious trouble, because the entire government machinery has been shaken by the revelations in the Bond Commission. The type of transaction that had taken place, which were not in public domain previously, and the government has to take full responsibility now, and if it can amend its ways right now by taking action against the people who are responsible, it can save itself. Otherwise, my guess is that the government will fall.
Can I intervene in just one question, answer to you?
Yes.
I don't think in our law it is possible for the President to initiate any action by the Attorney General. Attorney General is an independent person. When material is before him, he must decide and initiate action. So I don't think any politician can, in law, get the Attorney General to initiate action, because he has the right. Now the President has can give and has given direction, still not denied by him or by his office, that he has asked Ravi Karunaratne to step down, Karunanayake to step down. Ravi Karunanayake's question is that the President has not told him, but the President's office has never denied the facts. So those are facts I just want to bring to your notice.
Can I ask Mr. Rusipal this question, please? Mr. Rusipal, before I ask you the question, I've got a little maths problem for you. 40, 23 and 29. Does it ring a bell? Do you know what I'm talking about? 40, 23 and 29.
Sorry, I can't.
There are three figures here, 40, 23 and 29. Do you know what I'm talking about? No. Right. 40 years is the time that Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe has been in Parliament. 23 is the time he's been leading the United National Party. 29 is the number of elections he's lost. Now then, do you think that he is the ideal person? Because after all, he's been in charge of the central bank, okay? And there's no responsibility coming up. How do we compare? Somebody mentioned leadership here about Prime Minister and so on before. When we look at Lee Kuan Yew and the way he handled the Singapore Airlines problem in 45 minutes, that was leadership. We had the Prime Minister of Bhutan giving a speech about his country and its environmental and its gross happiness index, right, instead of the gross national debt and per capita and all that. And then we have Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, whose idea of leadership seems to be to taking the media on and not speaking a word about this central bank bond thing. After all, when they got rid of Mr. Mahendran, they didn't get rid of him. He came to the end of his term, his temporary term, which was Mr. Cabral's, the balance of Mr. Cabral's tenure. Thereafter, Mr. Wickremesinghe went out of his way. He went more than the extra mile. He took this chap along on various state delegations, meetings. He was a regular feature at the Treasury Secretariat. He signed the attendance book and so on. And he was giving him a cloak of sort of respectability. Is that leadership?
For us, I tend to agree with you, because just confine ourselves to this bond issue alone. What happened at the beginning? On the 27th of February when this happened, when the first statement was made by the Prime Minister in the Parliament on the 17th of March 2015, he said the same thing that he is telling today. He wants to wait till the investigations are over. How many investigations or queries have seen the light of day after this date, up to this date? 2 COPE committees, 1 3-man committee, bribery commission, and this commission now that is going on. We are seeing so many things happening, but he is waiting for some conveyance of a decision, by way of a decision, to take action against the perpetrators. This is not leadership. You mentioned about the airline, the Singapore Airlines issue. It took only 20 minutes for Lee Kuan Yew. When the whole airline was grounded, he summoned all the people and said, do you want me to hold this country to ransom or send you all home? They went back to work. That is leadership that we have seen in the world. That is what we are yearning to see, aspiring. This Prime Minister today, he is a lawyer himself. You know, when a prima facie is established, in this bond case, no one should become a lawyer to say that there is a prima facie established. The very fact that the President appointed a commission, giving a warrant, stating reasons and informing what to inquire into, is the establishment of a prima facie. And what is he waiting for?
I hear what you say about the Prime Minister, but I've got another question. This is for Mr. Govindasiri. First of all, I'm wondering, Mr. Govindasiri, you've got a jacket on.
Yes, I do. I got a lot of things to cover these days. I don't think even a coat would be sufficient.
A cloak of respectability?
I think I need not only a raincoat but an overcoat. So much of dirt to cover in this country.
My question to you is this. Mr. Karunanayake, let's be fair, okay? He is a politician, but he's also, from what we know or what we've been told, a rather successful businessman. He said in court that his company was, or the company that his family is now associated with and he was before, and all that business, is capitalized at about 4.5 billion rupee. It's a 4.5 billion rupee company with assets of that amount or capital.
Assets worth 4.5 billion rupees.
4.5 billion. Okay.
18-acre land.
18-acre land. Fine. So my point is, Mr. Karunanayake, apart from being a politician, is rather a successful businessman. It's fair to describe him probably as a tax-paying millionaire. Now, what's wrong with him and his home in Battaramulla, which he described as his permanent residence, is rather palatial. It's big. He's lived there for over 20 years. He's got used to a certain lifestyle. So when he wants to find temporary accommodation, he's unlikely to go and want to live in some muduku, let's call it that, okay? So what's wrong with him going and finding himself a penthouse or an apartment? What's wrong with him?
So I don't think anything's wrong with him living in comfort, provided it is declared legal money that he's utilizing.
But he admitted in court that he said, when Mr. De Oliveira asked him about his relationship, he said they were friends, the family were friends. They were family friends for a very long time. Mr. De Oliveira wanted to know When? He said, I can't give you
Yes,
a date.
but remember, he's not Faraz or Gominda Asri. He is the Prime Minister of this country.
No.
He is the Finance Minister of this country at the relevant time.
Watch your words carefully.
Oh yes, you can't make him Prime Minister.
That's a very scary word. I'm very sorry for the mistake. But he is that. Knowing this position he held, I would have been very hesitant to appoint him as the Finance Minister of a UNP government, a person who has circulated in so many parties, whose wealth is...
No, but my point is different. My point is that he says he was a friend of the Aloysius family.
Can I cut in this here?
No, can I just say...
Just
yes,
for one simple intervention, please.
Yes,
Excuse me.
Yes, of course.
If he knows, if he admits that he is a family friend...
But he did. You were there. He said that.
Yes. Now you say, I'm picking up from your statement.
Yeah.
Okay, he is a family friend. He knows what this family friend is involved in and what he is doing.
Yeah.
He knows very well, before he went into this flat,
Yeah.
that this owner of this flat has leased it out to his family friend. And this is where morality comes in for us. He knowing very well that this is a question that is now in litigation, a matter of investigation, something untold has happened, and the man involved is the person who has taken this on lease. And if he has to know it because he is a family friend, his own admission. He knows he is moving with them, but he moves into his flat. This is where morality comes in. Forget the law.
I think the real problem is that Aloysius and that his company is involved in that bond scam. With such people, a finance minister must keep a distance. He must not get to contribute to his own welfare. And secondly, I think I just want to make a point.
We're going for a short commercial.
No, just 1 minute, please. Can just 1 minute?
I'll give you 30 seconds to finish. Yes.
Now, why did Mahinda Rajapaksa not sign that when the opposition provided that no confidence motion? Why did Mahinda Rajapaksa not sign it? I heard it yesterday on Sirasa.
But he has also clarified that he will be voting. He'll be voting for
why didn't he sign?
That is the question. And why didn't he sign?
Was he also getting benefited from Aloysius?
No, I don't know about that, but certainly it's very suspicious. When you talk of leadership, that's why I'm bringing this point.
But with Mr. Dasri, we need to be a bit fair. Mr. Rajapaksa didn't have to sign it. They got the required minimum signatures.
True,
and that
but
was it.
he is the leader of the opposition. It's like Ranil Wickremesinghe.
He was probably busy. He was probably busy.
You have to place a signature.
For us, the signatures were taken at a family wedding.
Yes.
Where Mahinda Rajapaksa was also there. So
the pen ran out of ink.
But what is important is it's very important that Mahinda Rajapaksa speaks at that debate. That will
initially he said, I recollect just a day prior, President Mahinda Rajapaksa, former President Mahinda Rajapaksa said that he would sign. That he would sign, and the next afternoon at an event he said, no, I don't have to sign. I have never signed. And now he says that he would vote against for the no confidence motion and to oust the foreign minister.
But I think more important is he must speak.
Does royalty sign?
Pardon?
Does royalty sign, or do they get their lieutenants?
Royalty, I don't think is in Parliament.
But they did say we are a senior cabinet minister.
Oh, of course, they are part of royalty.
So we're going for a short commercial break, and we would discuss further as to the no confidence motion that has been tabled. We'll be talking about who has been thrown under the bus now. All this and more after the short commercial break. Stay connected. Stay with Face the Nation.